The Eeveelutions have always been some of my favorite Pokemon. Eevee himself is a much better mascot than some electric rodent. In order to show the power of science and evolution, I've decided to play through a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Platinum using only the Eeveelutions, where I get one Eevee after each gym. Before I begin, let me know which Eeveelution is your favorite. Mine will be clear very soon. I start by naming my rival Neanderthal, or Neandert for short, since he will try to stop my goal of evolving all the Eevees. But his underdeveloped brain isn't nearly as advanced as mine. He thinks we can just run through grass and avoid the vicious Pokemons. Professor Rowan, who knows a thing or two about evolution, appears and gives me a Turtwig named Eevee. That magically becomes a real boy in the first rival fight. Neandert is a chump, just like his chimp, so I evilly defeat him, but Eevee does not level up after the fight, unlike most real starters. I named this guy Darwin, for obvious reasons, and Dawn insists on giving me a tour of this town, even though it only has like 5 buildings, all with signs. She further insists on showing me how to catch wild Pokemon. I guess I can't do anything by myself in this game. What happened to survival of the fittest? In Jubilife, she tries to Pokeshame me because I haven't caught any Pokemon. I'm just waiting for the right one, sheesh. Oh, and Looker is, well, he's Looker. Enough said. At this point in the game, there are only 2 Eeveelutions I can get, Espeon or Umbreon. But since they're both based on friendship, I need to do a lot of walking. After all, nothing says friendship quite like shoving your friend into a small sphere attached to your belt as they bounce around. But it's taking so long, so I decide to try again later. In the meantime, Neander shows up to intimidate me with some incoherent grunts. But I taught Darwin Return, meaning that this fight is a cinch. I scare Rourke into actually doing his job and can finally Eeveevolve Darwin. I'm pretty sure Umbreon would have been a better choice here, but since Darwin is mild, and Espeon is my favorite, I evolve him during the day. The Rourke fight is going to require a bit of luck. And by a bit, I mean all the luck. If I lose, I'll just try Umbreon next time. The strat here is basically to use Sand Attack and hope that Geodude doesn't kill me. It's not a great strat, I know, but the only attacking move I have right now is Return, so it's all I've got. After a number of Sand Attacks and Tail Whips, I start with Return that is now a 3-hit KO, unless Rourke heals. I still manage to take out the rock with a whopping 8 HP left, level up, and learn Confusion. And with that move, this match is over, because both his Cranidos and his Onix fall to 1 Confusion apiece. Like I said at the start, that was certainly a risky play, but it's only the first gym, so risky is okay for now. For that very close victory, I get to catch another Eevee. Now Adapt is adamant, with plus attack and minus special. Throughout this run, the Eevee's natures will help me determine which Eeveelution to get, to an extent. Professor Rowan insults some guys who are just minding their own business, making me defend him. Ugh. After which, I learn that Rowan is studying Pokemon evolution. Hey, me too, though I'm in the Eeveelution branch. Following Rowan's lead, I insult, and then beat up, another innocent civilian, making him hide in his house. Maybe Rowan isn't the best role model after all. But Nuzlocke Joe? I hear that guy is pretty great. So why don't you subscribe to the channel for a better role model than Rowan? It turns out these galactic guys really like honey. No, that's an understatement. They're obsessed with it, because they think it attracts a ton of Pokemon. Little do they know, it only attracts 1 Pokemon every 6 hours. So not a great way to catch them all. I defeat Mars with some difficulty, though a critical feint attack would have taken me out here. In the Eterna Forest, I decide to evolve Adapt into Leafeon by hanging out near some mossy rock. And even though it made the Mars fight more difficult, I kept him under level 15 so he could learn Razor Leaf as soon as he evolved. Oh, and in Adapt's very first fight, he gets poisoned and almost dies. That would have really sucked. But he makes up for it in the next battle by taking out 2 Abras at once. I forgot that Razor Leaf hit all opponents. Great job adapting, Adapt. We exit the forest and begin the Gardenia fight. I lead with Adapt against her Turtwig, and this is a really long and boring battle. I can't do all that much to her Twig, and her Twig does even less to me, though he does set up 2 Reflects, which draws us out quite a bit. Eventually, Adapt comes out on top, though he had to use his Oran Berry in the process. Anticipating a Stun Spore, I pivot to Darwin, who does indeed get paralyzed, and paralyzes the Roserade in return. But then he heals it with a berry. Confusion is not a 1-hit KO, allowing the Rose to paralyze me again, but then I take it out next turn. The Cherrim can't really do much to me, so I take it out with a few Confusions, winning me the fight. The second gym required much less luck than the first. Maybe my strats are evolving along with my Eevees. Oh, and I immediately teach Darwin Grass Knot because it's a great move for him to have. I catch Mutant, the timid Eevee, and after running around in the vast underground for a while, he evolves into Umbreon. You know, the evolution I probably should have got 2 gyms ago. Oh, by the way, I am catching low-level Eevees, so they evolve by level 15, which is when they learn their first stab move. I break into Galactic Headquarters, and I'm somehow only noticed by the one other invader, until I get to the fattest Team Galactic member. You get it? Because Jupiter is so big? Astronomy joke. Darwin takes out the Zubat with a confusion, no problem. The Skuntank, though, is a problem. I swap to Mutant on a Night Slash, and proceed to lower his defenses with Tail Whip, as he lowers my accuracy. After getting screeched, Adapt comes out on a Night Slash to take out the Skunk with a Quick Attack and a few extra sharp leaves. Jupiter then dumps a ton of exposition on me about her team's plans. She's trying to scare me away, but it does the exact opposite. I have a Dawn encounter, but she is not a fan of natural selection. After realizing how much stronger I am, she doesn't want to go extinct, so she leaves me alone. Good choice, Dawn. Fantina, however, is not as smart. Against her Duskull, I lead with Adapt to take her out with a single Razor Leaf. That was nice. The Mismagius comes out and takes a Razor Leaf, but heals with a berry. And I get confused. I don't have a Person Berry. After Adapt fails to adapt to this new, confusing situation, I pivot to Mutant, who almost kills the ghost, until Fantina heals. He gets confused and hits himself twice in a row before overcoming it to take out this ghost. The Haunter does basically nothing to my tank and falls in 2 hits. I wish I'd had a Person Berry there. For my victory, I can go and get another Eevee, and this one is legitimate. I do forget to nickname this gentle Eevee, so I'll need to fix that. But first, Darwin destroys Neanderthal single-podedly without even getting hit. This is why he's my favorite evolution. He's just so awesome. And this also goes to show why you shouldn't try to fight science, because if you do, it'll hit you in the face with confusion. And now I get a Person Berry in Solaceon Town. Way to rub it in my face, game. Still, this town is good people, at least in Platinum, because in the Solaceon Ruins, you can get one of each of the OG evolution stones, meaning I can plan which evolutions to get very effectively. And since Crash Your Wake gives me a sneak preview of the next gym, I'm sure you know which evolution I'm getting right now. Why, Vaporeon, of course. Why not? I named that previously unnamed Eevee Jean, by the way. Against Maylene, I wanted to buy the Psychic TM from the Game Corner, but it was too expensive. Swords Dance, on the other hand, is relatively cheap. So, Adapt does a little dance to take out the Metatite after getting slowed down, and I heal with a Shell Bell. The Lucario hits with a fairly weak Drain Punch, and then immediately gets a crit Force Palm. At this HP, Adapt would die to a crit, but I take a risk and use Quick Attack to finish him off. From Machoke, I finally bring out Darwin to take a Rock Tomb and win with Confusion. As a fighting type gym leader, it's not fair that she has Pokemon who aren't weak to Psychic moves. I don't like it. She's hurting Darwin's confidence. Damsel in Distress Dawn loses her Pokedex to Team Galactic, who says they can put it to better use. They do realize this isn't honey, right? You can't just throw it on a tree. Here, I want to vent just a little bit. At one point during this double battle, Dawn's Clefairy uses Wake Up Slap against Stunky, even though Croagunk is clearly asleep. I mean, I get why she did it, but it's the principle of the thing. Making my way to Pastoria City, I encounter a clown who wants to fight me, because he's all alone. That's kinda sad, actually. And now, I evolve Hereditary, the newest Eevee, into a Jolteon. Obviously I was gonna do that before the 5th gym. I'm not an animal. Neander crashes into me before the water gym, so let's deal with him first. Hereditary takes out Staravia in a single hit, while being quick attacked. The Weasel similarly goes down. For the Fire Monkey, I bring out Jean to use Water Gun that he got via Heart Scale. Before the monkey falls, however, Neander pivots to Roselia on another Water Gun. Huh, I guess even his thinking can evolve. I bring an Adapt on a Leech Seed to take him out with a Return. The monkey comes back out, but at this HP, also falls to a Return. That wasn't too bad. Hopefully the gym is just as easy. Mr. Crasher starts with a Gyarados, who actually survives Hereditary's Thundershock, and a Waterfall would have killed me if it crit. That's not a great way to start. After healing, the Water Snake falls in a few more hits. Against Quagsire, I obviously pivot to Adapt on a Mudshot and take him out with a Razor Leaf, healing the tiny bit of damage that he did. Last is Wake's Floatzel, who outspeeds me, gets a critical Ice Fang, because why not, and survives a Razor Leaf. So it's time to swap. I pivot to Jean on another Ice Fang, do almost nothing with Bite, except encourage Wake to heal. Dang it. When Jean is at risk of dying, I bring out Mutant to tank a Crunch and confused the Water Weasel, who almost immediately snaps out of it, but it gave Mutant enough time to finish the fight with 2 feint attacks and then a quick attack. Considering that I had both a grass and electric type, I thought that fight would go a lot smoother than it did. But I guess they wouldn't give you a theme song if you were a pushover, even if you have to make it up yourself. There's some explosion in the Great Marsh, but there are no Eevees in that place, so who cares? I do care that Cynthia, who can use Fly, by the way, decides to give me the secret potion to give to this Psyduck horde, even though she could easily have done it by now. Anyway, I catch the next Eevee, who I name DNA, and this guy immediately evolves into Flareon. I bribe the Psyduck gang with some drugs, and Cynthia shows up here anyway. What the actual heck? Why ask me to do this if you were coming here at the same flippin' time? And then she asked me to do another task for her. I really don't like this girl, but I was going to Celestic Town anyway because it's my favorite place in Sinnoh. After all, it has this glasses-obsessed guy who gives you the best item in the game. I enter this cave to look at a very primitive wall painting, and am interrupted, first by an old lady, and then Cyrus, who isn't technically old, but looks like it. He wants to destroy this painting out of spite, which is kind of weird. For this battle, I lead with DNA for his first real fight. The Sneasel does some damage, but falls in a couple of embers. Darwin comes out to one-shot the Golbat with a Psybeam. Mutant confuses the Murkrow and deals a bit of damage, but not that much. Alright, let's just swap to Hereditary to get a critical Thundershock. I really need stronger moves here. Thundershock and Ember at level 38? What a joke. Once I get the ability to Surf, I can get all sorts of better moves and items, like Thunderbolt behind Valley Windworks, which for some reason Jolteon doesn't learn naturally, and Flamethrower in the Fuego Ironworks, which, you guessed it, Flareon does not learn naturally. That's kinda weird, huh? I also steal some old guy's belts. I encounter Neandert, who already has his gym badge. How is this unevolved nincompoop always ahead of me? Hereditary takes out the Staraptor with his newest move, before switching to Darwin to Psybeam the Heracross. Now the Floatzel has Pursuit, so swapping would not be a good idea, but I don't need to because a Grass Knot one-shots the not very heavy Weasel, and the rest of this guy's team falls to Darwin. This is what happens when you have an expert belted Espeon. Neandert tells me to train at Iron Island before the gym, but who needs that? Instead, I head to Byron and lead with DNA. Now Flareon is slow, but should be able to outspeed this Magneton and one-shot with a Flamethrower. The same thing happens with Steelix. Because Bastiodon takes neutral damage from fire, DNA goes for a Dig, which lets the dinosaur boost his defense. I was hoping for a Rock Slide while I was underground, so that's not great. At least he does miss the Stone Edge when Flareon comes up. Out comes Jean, on a Stone Edge that actually does hit, to respond with a Surf. I wanted the Expert Belt DNA to do that all on his own, but he still did okay. Neandert somehow knows that I never got the Strength HM, so after a quick detour, I am allowed into the public library, which never should have blocked me in the first place because I pay taxes. I basically own this building. After witnessing another explosion, on the telly this time, some random guy calls us old dude and kids, which sounds like a crappy band name. I do all the lake stuff and find Maylene hiking in the snow, just like me, but how can she walk past these trainers when I can't? That's no fair. I get my last Eevee and evolve Natural Selection, or Nat Select, by keeping his body at freezing temperatures. Sounds a bit like abuse to me. In Snowpoint, we are ready for the 7th badge. DNA once again has an Expert Belt and manages to Flamethrower through her Sneasel, Piloswine, and a Abomasnow. But since there is Hail, and Frostlass certainly outspeeds, I don't want to risk him. Instead, I pivot to Mutant on a Shadow Ball. He starts with Confuse Ray, and then Feint Attack. Not only is that move super effective, but it nullifies the Frostlass's Snow Cloak and the double team she tried too. Now it's time to infiltrate Galactic HQ, just in time to hear Cyrus blather on about some nonsense. He talks about how the world is incomplete, all the while I have a complete team of all of the evolutions. I'm certainly not missing one at all, so he should follow my lead. Cyrus obviously needs some help, so I try to share with him the message of our savior, Eevee, but he wants none of it. Flareon one-shots the Sneasel with a Flamethrower. I feel like we just did this, but he is screeched. Nat Select comes out for the Crobat, and is promptly confused. He hits through it, and fails to knock out the bat. Not a great debut here. After some healing, he does finish off the bat, and after learning that this is his last Pokemon, the Honchkrow follows too. Cyrus gives me a Master Ball as a reward, but I have zero intentions of catching any more Eevees, so thanks for nothing. Jumping ahead to the Airspace Tower, I have a double battle against some planets, joined by Neandert. Now, I wasn't going to talk about this battle, because I wanted to save Neandert the embarrassment, but I changed my mind. After setting up an Aqua Ring, Jean proceeds to use Surf and takes out a couple of Bronzongs, as well as Neandert's Munchlax and his Staraptor too, just for good measure. In spite of that, Neandert's Weasel uses an Aqua Jet on Jean, healing him the tiny bit of damage that he had taken. That's not necessary, but that was a nice olive branch, and Jean responds by getting the Floatzel killed. Dang, Jean did an incredible job here. After watching Cyrus get sucked into a black hole, I turn tail and run. I bet you the real Darwin never had to deal with crap like this, though I eventually do return and get sucked in too. No amount of evolution research could have prepared me for this weird world. It seems somehow distorted. Anyway, it doesn't take too long before I find Cyrus hiding in the shadows. For this Houndoom, I leave with Jean and do the only reasonable thing I can. Flinch, get burned, and eventually use a rock-type hidden power. It actually did more than I was expecting. I was hoping he would have survived even a crit. Either way, this lets me safely swap out to Hereditary on a Thunderfang. At this HP, a Thunderbolt takes him out. The reason I wanted Jolteon out now is to bait out the Gyarados, who thinks he can kill me with an Earthquake. Not that I give him a chance. Next, I Protect in case I get faked out, and swap to Nat Select on a Night Slash. He's not doing any real damage, but he survives a few hits before being replaced with Mutant. This guy has a Fire hidden power that also does basically no damage and takes an X-Scissor. I was concerned about the Gyarados in this fight, but I really should have worried about Weavile apparently. Hereditary comes back out, maybe I never should have swapped him, and finishes him off with a Thunderbolt. The Honchkrow also falls to a Thunderbolt, but the Crobat somehow outspeeds, which was surprising. A crit there could have taken Hereditary, but I had a backup plan if need be. After defeating him one last time, Cyrus decides to stay all alone in this distortion world. Well, that sucks for you, I'm out of here. With some preparation, and irrelevant nonsense like walking on moving gears, my evolutions and I are ready for the penultimate test, this electric dude. I did strongly consider a Swords Dance sweep here with Adapt, but those are not that interesting. Instead, he uses 2 returns on the Jolteon, healing his paralysis with a Cherry Berry. This brings out a particularly fat looking Raichu with a Signal Beam. After a few returns, and Raichu healing, Adapt cannot adapt to getting paralyzed. Hereditary did such a great job against Cyrus, so let's bring him out again. A single hit takes out the fat rat. He takes a Fire Punch from the Electivire, but can't take a second. So out comes DNA to soak up the hit, before returning to Hereditary to soak up the electric hit. After a single return, I repeat the same basic strat to get Hereditary healed. One more round of that, and it's on to Mutant for a Giga Impact. That was pretty great timing actually. After confusing him, this guy falls to a payback. For the Luxray, Nat Select comes out on a Mist Thunderfang to bait out a Fire Fang for DNA. Not only does Fire Fang not outspeed, in spite of all the speed EVs I gave him, but he is also flinched and almost dies. Well, that was crappy. Expecting a Thunderfang here, Hereditary comes out on a Crunch. Well, that was also crappy. Mutant makes a return to use Payback, and oh, he outspeeds. Thanks a lot. I need to swap to try and heal Hereditary, who is bit with some ice, and then dies. Well, great. I should have just done a Swords Dance sweep. Still, I'm glad I got to use some of these Evolution's abilities because it was pretty cool. With my back against the wall, there was only one Evolution to call. Darwin, of course. With a Choice Specs, he also probably could have swept this guy's team. A good rule of thumb for a Nuzlocke is to not draw out battles longer than is necessary. You know, the exact opposite of what I just did. After all, play stupid games, and stupid gym leaders kill your stupid Pokemon. The one silver lining here, as I make my way to the Elite Four, is that I no longer need to choose which evolution I hate the most. After all, the decision of which guy rots in the box for all eternity was made for me. At the very entrance to the Elite Four, Neandert thinks he can try one more time to beat me, because every other time worked out so well for him. A Focus Sash Nat Select takes a close combat, and Ice Beams this Staraptor. Infernape tries to use a Flamethrower, but is blocked by Jean, who surfs the Fighting Monkey. The Roserade uses Giga Drain on Darwin, but can't stand a Choice Spec Psychic. Neither can the Heracross for that matter. Weasel can, and has Crunch, so Mutant comes out and does a lot with Dark Pulse, but I don't want to risk a crit here, so out comes Adapt to return. I wish he had had Leaf Blade, but alas, In Gen 4, the evolutions don't learn their really useful moves until way late in the game, so he's stuck with Return, which is still good enough. And he takes out the Snorlax too. So now, this unevolved buffoon is finally out of my way. No longer will he hold me back. No longer will I have to interact with such a dork. With my newfound confidence, let's just go to the bug guy, shall we? And what's up with that hair, by the way? DNA leads the charge, and thankfully hits Yanmega even after a double team. A flamethrower also takes out the Vespiquen thanks to choice specs. Darwin comes out on a Stone Edge, he had a Focus Sash by the way, and proceeds to Psychic the second Heracross of the day. Jean uses a few Surfs on the Scizor, only taking some minor damage. Last is Drapion. Mutant takes a few hits to use Confuse Ray, letting Natselect come out for free. A few Ice Beams later, and we have beaten the first Elite Four member. Aaron was not so tough, even with that hair. The Bertha battle should be easy, albeit somewhat cheap. I do start with a few Swords Dances after all. But again, it's not my fault Adapt can't learn Leaf Blade till way later. I wouldn't need this setup otherwise. The attack boost means that he takes out the Gliscor, and I swap to Jean just as the Sandstorm ends. As you might expect, he surfs through the rest of Bertha's team. I would have left in Adapt if he had a stronger Grass move, but all he has is Razor Leaf. And it can also miss, so why take the unnecessary risk? Unless I'm battling Volkner, apparently. Now Flint, the fired guy, is actually going to be much more difficult than you might think. That's because Houndoom will outspeed, and does exactly that, setting up the Sun. Time to stall. Jean uses Aqua Ring, and then stalls for a few turns so that right as Houndoom fades, the Sun does too. And Jean gets some Shell Bell healing along the way. He protects to get a bit more healing, takes a Thunder Punch from this monkey, and uses another Surf. He doesn't use Protect on the Rapidash, because I assumed he was going to use Sunny Day, but I guess not. I can still work with that, hopefully. He protects the Magmortar, and brings out Mutant in his place. Mutant uses Confuse Ray, as the big Magmar absorbs some sunlight. I wonder what he's going to use next. It won't hurt to stay in for a bit, and Mutant does go for a couple of Dark Pulses. When he's low on health, I'll bring out Darwin, who I thought would win in 2 Psychics, but it actually takes 3. Not that it matters, the Magmortar doesn't do anything in the meantime. Last is Flareon. How dare you use my own Pokemon against me? But he misses an Overheat, and then dies. If Vaporeon were quite a bit faster, this could have been a Gene Sweep, but it didn't work out that way. Lucian thinks he is the toughest Elite Four member, but we'll see about that. Darwin Choice Spec Shadow Balls the Mr. Mime, as well as his much weaker twin. The Bronzong is a bit concerning, so out comes Adapt on a Calm Mind. Not what I expected. Now he should bear out a Psychic that Mutant would have avoided if Bronzong didn't use another Calm Mind. So this is not great. Over the next little while, this Bell uses some more Calm Minds as Mutant confuses him, and uses Dark Pulse to deal minimal damage. All I really need is a single crit, which means I don't get one. After Lucian cheats and uses a full restore, Mutant gets down really low and I need to change my strat. Since Bronzong has been primarily using Earthquake, Adapt can take the hit and crack the Liberty Bell with an X Scizor. Since I'm not sure if Adapt will outspeed Alakazam, Darwin comes out to take the Psychic, and you guessed it, Shadow Ball. The Gallade Stone Edges Jean, who baits out a Leaf Blade for Adapt. How come he gets that move? That's not fair. Return should be a 2-hit KO with a Silk Scarf, but I forgot about that berry. I should have just started with a Swords Dance. Adapt decides to risk a crit, we're right at the end anyway, and survives another hit. After Lucian fully restores his cheap Leaf Blade wielder, Return returns to be a 2-hit KO. See what I did there? Some might even say that Adapt adapted pretty well to that circumstance. Nice. We still have one last challenge though. Hey, I know you. You're that dealer for the Psyduck gang. Business must be going really well to get you all the way up here. Jean drowns the Spiritomb in just 2 Surfs. This baits out Roserade, so naturally I change to DNA on an Energy Ball, get Toxicked, and barely miss out on the kill with a Wise Glasses Flamethrower. That Roserade has basically no health at all. Since she'll probably heal, I decide to go for it again, hoping for a high roll, and the same thing happens. This is not how it was supposed to go. Anticipating another heal, DNA uses Flamethrower instead of Quick Attack, which was actually a mistake. I mean, the Flamethrower finally does its job, but so does the poison damage. I actually had intended to sack DNA a bit later on in this very fight, but his death here means that someone else will have to take his place. Gene attempts a pretty pathetic surf on the Milotic, which gets mirror coated right back. Yeah, that's not going to work for me. Mutant comes out and just as quickly returns so that Gene can get healed again just in case I need it later on. Then, Adapt comes out to Razor Leaf this majestic thing. Togekiss air slashes Mutant, and then Aura Spheres before getting confused. Darwin shrugs off a sphere, and thanks to the confusion, defeats Togekiss without getting hit again. Lucario falls to a Psychic, and then it's time to sacrifice one of my evolutions on the altar that is Garchomp. So who do I want to kill off? Obviously not Darwin, he's clearly the best. No, it's gotta be Adapt. He does have a chance at surviving if he gets lucky. He starts with a Swords Dance, takes the first Flamethrower, but fails to defeat the Garchomp with a return, so he dies. 2 deaths in one battle is pretty rough. Natselect comes out to finish the job. He can take a single Flamethrower, even the crit, because he had a Focus Sash, and then a single 4 times effective Ice Beam finishes off the battle and the run. It wasn't the most satisfying end, that's for sure. After all, 3 perfectly innocent evolutions won't evolve anymore, but for most of the run, they were a solid team. I do feel a little bad doing this run in Gen 4 because Sylveon didn't exist yet, but as long as I can use Espeon, I'm all good. Aside from all the deaths here at the end, overall this run went really well. Though I shouldn't be surprised because the evolutions are all pretty strong in their own ways. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next region.